So that was a really interesting presentation, and there was a lot going on there that really held us. So I want to make a couple of sort of transitional remarks and then go into a short PowerPoint and then really the activity for the day, because I want us to leave with taking some kernels of this information and really working on its implications for our classroom. That was the most rich part for me and for my purposes of the presentation that was just offered. I liked that it was used a piece of popular culture that's very current, that's very engaging for kids. I liked the celebrity factor. I appreciated the analysis on that as well, because that was really interesting. I noticed Robin Williams' voice right away in that, and I kept playing with what that means for me as I was watching it. It definitely meant what you were suggesting, that there's a sense of, wait a minute, there's a discontinuity there. But you're eased into it because he's a funny guy. And you also said something else really, really interesting. We think of Robin Williams, I think, generally speaking, right? Now, I'm not talking about anybody's specific opinion of Robin Williams, but we often think of Robin Williams not just as this comedian funny guy, but as a reasonable guy, as a fair person, as somebody who, you know, we might even want to hang out with, right? And laugh with some forth, you know? And even if we don't want to hang out with him, we can imagine him hanging out in all kinds of sort of fair-minded spaces. So celebrity appeal does that a lot. There's another way that occurs, analogous to the celebrity appeal, where we're sort of seduced by something and then potentially succumb to it. And that's by the beat, right? The beat in the music, and we're kind of into it. And underneath they're saying some of the most horrendous stuff sometimes, right? Sometimes they're saying such, you know, intriguing, critical things. Sometimes we have no idea because we're into, you know, the beat, whatever is being given to us. But what this says, and what I think is really important for us to think about in terms of this presentation, the whole notion of the media's role in construction of knowledge about multicultural issues, is that there already is an education process going on. We talked about briefly the difference between school and education, and schooling being the institution where education is taking place, but also education taking place in all of these other environments, formally and informally, in neighborhoods, with peer groups, with parents, with churches, with what have you. But most significantly, I think, is the education that occurs through the media, and the education that occurs around multicultural communities and multicultural topics. So, our thing is, what do we do with this? I think that we are mostly positively disposed toward critical deconstruction, but we are also, I think rightly so, needing to attend to issues of development in critical deconstruction. So, if we back off of formal deconstruction activities because of notions of development, which are very real, what else are we doing alongside this powerful onslaught of education about, in this instance, issues of diversity, of multiculturalism, that is going on in the media? We don't necessarily can deconstruct little Joe for the third grader who's hearing, you know, this all the time, right? Or, you know, a few years back, Tupac or Biggie or whoever, right? We might deconstruct lyrics with our high schoolers, with our college students, but we're probably not going to deconstruct those lyrics with the young ones. But we know they're being exposed to it. So what's our role in that process? I had both my kids with me this weekend. My son's a 22-year-old, my daughter's 9. And, well, you know, he had surgery, so he's home and so forth. And he's got all these videos, and we're watching, you know, 24, and we're watching Heroes and so forth. And she wants to watch all this stuff, too. And we're thinking through, okay, but what kind of conversation are we going to have alongside her watching this? What kind of conversation are we going to have to disrupt some of the education, perhaps, but more, I think, important, rather than disrupting and deconstructing, what are we going to put out there? Last comment toward this end, and then we'll switch up. I have a friend and mentor. His name is William Greaves. William Greaves is mostly a documentary filmmaker, but you may know him for a film he did back in the 70s with Richard Pryor called Bustin' Loose. It's very old, but it had Cicely Tyson, as he come from nonsense, Cicely Tyson and Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor is a buffoon, con man. He's outwitting his parole officer and not going to end up going back to jail because he agrees to drive Cicely Tyson, who is a social worker, across from Philadelphia to Oregon to a farm because she's got all these kids, and these kids are going to lose their home because this homeless shelter that they're living in is going to be closed. And anyway, the whole point is that this is what he was more known for, William Greaves, than his documentaries on Ralph Bunche and Ali and the Harlem Renaissance and Mary McLeod Bethune and so forth. But one of the things that background is important because I'm talking about somebody who, for his life, is somebody who has constructed images, both educational and also popular in nature. And he said to me one time, he said, it's more important than analyzing images. It's important to be constructing images, to be producing images, okay? So that rather than always be the recipient, we're actually proactively putting something out there. So one activity I might do with kids in helping them deal with the happy feet syndrome is to have them produce images, have them produce. What does it really look like to you? Glenda Hall upstairs has done quite a bit of this with real young kids with digital storytelling and so forth. And so if you've not explored that or have taken a class with her or so forth, that's highly recommended. Now there's tons more to say about this. There's tons more to say about it because we do have to be just deconstructing images. We do have to be interrupting the media's education that is so pervasive. But we also have to be engaging the media in ways that are both positive and interesting and engaging for the kids as well. Where the conversations will come in is when you see the kids reproducing images that they have seen. And they start reproducing the stereotypes, or they start reproducing things that are negative or derogatory. What is that? Why did you make that? Where have you seen that before? What does that remind you of? Who do you know that's like that? Why do you suppose that is? What else might there be? All these kinds of conversations that arise from questions based on images that they're producing. And then holding their images alongside those other images which they are so consuming.